Right. Hello. Good morning. So okay, I've been working with React for since the very beginning. I was very lucky because I was at a point in my career where React hadn't come out yet, or had just come out, and I've been a consultant for like a few years, where I got to become like a serious developer. Um, and I took 6 months off before I started working like formally again, and I dived into React and Webpack at that time. It was like perfect timing, and I'm really happy about that because it kind of put me on the path to what I perceive to be like good career, I guess. Learn a shit ton of stuff, met a lot of amazing people, and also worked at places that's given me a lot of trust and freedom. And even though I'm a human being and I have shitty days like everyone else, like rationally, I can say that I've been very lucky. Um, but I've always been pushing back on React. It's never felt like, yes, this is how I think UI development should be done. Um, because there's been this, well, the thing is, React has always done UI development in the sense of UI development, like writing UI. React has all, and that's why I fell in love with React, because it basically is, let's put Excalibur up here. So React's promise is, oh, that should be larger. This is React's promise, right? It's a function of state. You give it state and you produce UI. And this is amazing, right? But this is not how React works anymore. And I'm not talking about state data in the last talk. Like, this stopped working at a point, and it really was at the point where hooks was introduced. And the thing about React, like, how should I put this? So there was a moment when React could have made a choice. I understand why they didn't do it. Well, I don't. Well, it's hard. Like in retrospect. Anyways, just let me say, the point where React became a huge friction for me was when they introduced hooks. Because that's the state management of React, right? It's not the producing of the UI. It's not this simple concept and idea. Because this simple concept and idea, that's when you write. Do we have this code there? So that concept, that is what we know as my component return hello world. This is state UI, but we express it as props UI, right? You have external dependencies coming in as props, and whenever those external dependencies change, it reruns the component, right? That is the promise. But that's not how React actually works. So there's two things that really annoys me with React. One thing is this. Now this isn't true anymore. It's not external dependencies that causes the UI to update. It's internal dependencies. And these internal dependencies are part of the reconciliation loop. So every time any external dependency changes or an internal dependency changes, it will run the function again. And it's just super weird, right? Because you're calling this function multiple times. But in your programming mind, this runs once, right? Or whenever you want to call it. That's what a function does. When you call it, it does this. It instantiates state and everything. But this only happens the first time it reconciles, except with strict mode, where it happens twice. And it just gets worse with use effect and everything. It just completely breaks the simple concept. That's my point. The other thing is, if this component doesn't take props, it still reconciles. So if I have a composition of parent component, return my component, every time parent component reconciles, my component reconciles, even though there's no external dependencies. And this also makes me so upset, because there's absolutely no reason. And this is one of the biggest performance issues with React, is completely unnecessary rendering. And it's so, in my mind, like, I don't know React. And of course, the React developers are much smarter than me. But this just doesn't make sense to me. So what happens is that to fix all of this, we bring in a new paradigm. We bring in a reactive paradigm on top of React. So you have all these like reconciliation-based primitives for state management locally and props passing and context. And then you have the reactive primitives that you typically do globally that we're now trying to bring closer with Impact. But it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve this fundamental frustration I have with React. And I've so many times I've been thinking about like, why don't just build my own VDOM, or not necessarily my own VDOM, because that's difficult, but find some low-level virtual DOM library where I can just put reactive primitives on it, and it's solved, right? And then you have something like Solid coming out that that kind of, I was hoping to be kind of my escape from React, but it isn't. And the reason it isn't is because of this. Like, React does this beautiful reconciliation of UI, allowing you to use just the language to express the dynamic nature of UI. The problem is state. This is the problem with React. But then you have, if you're in a reactive paradigm, completely in a reactive paradigm, you need to express your UI like this, right? Because the function isn't called again and again. So you have these other primitives that doesn't support TypeScript properly. And to me, it just doesn't make sense. I don't want to leave this. This is what I want for my UI definition. I don't want this. But this is what Solid does, and I just don't like it. They have like a switch primitive, I think, and it doesn't work with TypeScript. Anyways, but I want this, right? For my state management, I want this. I want the reactive primitives. And I'm like back and forward on like, how am I going to, at least for my own sake, try to find like what I'm after. And when I built this slide, I was like, this is the core. This is how I think we should build UIs. You should observe state and you should reconcile UI, right? So you get this for UI and you get this for state. And again, I'm like trying to, do I have to build my own thing? No, I don't want to build my own thing. It doesn't make any sense. I don't want to do anything like that. Try to convince people to move over to something else and maintain that. It's just a really bad idea. But then I looked into Vue again. Like, I've been looking at Vue a few times. Watched like their presentations, and like Vue is an amazing project. Regardless of like, forget about the technical stuff. As a project is really, really important, because React represents something that comes out of Meta, and there's a lot of influence, like corporate influence, and they're moving the community towards their own goals more. And it's considered like a senior type of framework. They don't want to make so many opinions, so you have to make a shit ton of opinions on your own, and so on and so on. And then it's adopted by Vercel, which have their influence on how React is gonna, like, React itself isn't like transferred ownership to Vercel, but they're heavily invested. Like, they hired people from the React team, and so on. But I think, like, not to say Vercel is bad at doing that, because they also, like, they want to encourage a community where we have different solutions. Like, they also hired Rich Harris, which works on Svelte. So you have like different options. So that's great. But Vue represents the truly open source framework. I'm not saying they're not without influence, but there's no company that goes in and kind of owns them. They have a shit ton of sponsorship, so it's very broad, right? And Vue is not just about what we consider Vue. They also do Vite, and they're like really pushing us forward, and making web development better. And I have to say, like, React has definitely put some ideas out. But as a whole, I'm not sure if it's making web development better. Especially now with like really pushing people to run like a node server to do optimized data fetching. It's like it's just making things more and more complicated. Like, this is the core idea of React. This is a beautiful idea. But then you get hooks on top of that, and now you fucking get server-side node process data fetching on top of that. Like, it's, and you don't have to, but they're really pushing it. It just makes me upset. Okay, so that was my rant. And then I'm like, anyways, back to Vue. I'm looking at Vue, and I know that Vue has JSX support. Here we go. The thing about Vue is that they're really pushing their template, right? Which is basically the same as this thing that I don't want. This is just a JSX observation type of thing, but this could be a template language, right? And even though template language are powerful, because you can introduce a lot of simplification in it, again, it's like, even though Vue has their own like Vtur or something plugin for VS Code, which gives VS TypeScript inference on top of the template, it's not correct, right? Because if you do like a vshow kind of thing, you don't have type narrowing or anything like that, as far as I know, at least in a template. But Vue has reconciliation. Has JSX, but it's kind of hidden, and it's a bit of a weird API. So, but I wanted to explore it, because with that JSX, you don't only get JSX, you also get reconciliation. That's the point. And that reconciliation works exactly how I personally think it should work. So let's explore that. So the only thing you have to do to make Vue a JSX-based solution is that instead of using, if you're using Vite, instead of using plugin Vue, you use plugin Vue JSX. That's all you need to do. And now you can render your app as JSX. There's no templates or anything like that. But as I said, the API is a little bit quirky. So let's look at that. So what we kind of love from React is that you can just use a function, right? This is really, really important. But that's not the case with Vue. You have to do export default define component, and then you have to give it a callback, but you have to give it another callback. So this first callback represents the scope of really state management, and that scope returns the function that reconciles. And like, this sounds confusing now, but it will all make sense. So if I do this, and I think we have something running here. Yeah, so here you go. Hello world. Oh, sorry, maybe I should put this. I can't see it. Like, you can kind of see it. Maybe I should remove the. Let's see, FTSX. Let's just remove these things. Yeah, you kind of see it. Sorry, my head is. Can I do something about this? Height. Oh, this is the logo. Is it like oh, sorry about this. Oh, I guess this is like some general. There we go. They want to have it centered. Of course, I didn't predict this. Whatever, we don't care about this. Just trust me. It says hello world behind it. It's not the point. But what is the point? That this is a little bit weird, right? This is far from what we know from React. But the point is, when you want to do observation for state and you want to do reconciliation for UI, they got it right. Which means that if I change it to this, we rather return this. We have two different scopes here. We have the state scope, or what's called the setup in Vue. And then we have, let's do return. And this is the, kind of call it template. This is the UI scope. And this function only runs once. But this return function, this will reconcile. So every time some prop or state you're accessing here changes, it will reconcile. But there's a really important thing here, and that is my nested component. So we're gonna add some stuff here. Let's add count, and they call it ref in Vue. And we're gonna say hello world. Let's put it at the front so you can see it, hopefully. Count.value. And then we're gonna do on click count.value plus. And I think that's it. So if I click it now, you can see it increases. Great. But let's do this. And we're gonna add this my nested component. Oh, and it needs to return something like that. You see there's some text there. And let's console log. Hello there. You know what? We're gonna break out of this so we can see things better. Let's do this instead. There we go. Oh, what the hell happened here? Cool. So we have our thingy, and then we have a console log inside my nested component. So when we load this up, it says hello there. But you see this when I change this count? Nothing happens in my nested component. And this, because it doesn't have any dependencies, it has nothing to observe, right? So it shouldn't change anything. But if I were to say props, if we move the count, for example, in here as well, and we'll go in and we'll actually observe that count. Oh, sorry. Oh, come on. Count.value. You see it updates, right? And this is exactly how it should work. And this is like the templating language for Vue is even more optimized than this, but you don't need any more than this. Like if you want to optimize a component, you split it up. And now you can, by the very fact of splitting it up, it just becomes more performant. right? Because by default, it won't reconcile, which makes a shit ton of sense. I don't understand why React doesn't have this behavior. It really annoys me. Anyways, sorry, I'm very emotional about this because I spent like my last years like battling this and being really heartbroken why it has this behavior. But anyways, so what I meant to go through here is to explain that this makes so much sense to me. This works exactly, like technically, this works exactly how I want it to work. Now, the thing that I don't like about this in Vue is just the signature. I don't like the signature. Because one thing is doing this, but as complexity increases, that's gonna be that's gonna be a problem. You can imagine this growing and this growing, and then it just gets very hard to reason about, really. I would imagine maybe this is fine. Like, I should be careful, but my point is, I think for React developers, moving from React and then seeing this signature, it's almost as big of a threshold as moving to the templating language. So I was thinking, like, how could we create a signature that's more in tune with React, and then that makes it easier for React developers to understand how Vue actually works and how you're keeping the reconciliation behavior of React, but you're just moving to observing state and props, making it way more performant. So what I did is I created this tiny abstraction that we're going to explore, where instead of component, we're going to do import component from component. So we're going to think about this differently. We're going to just define our component. So I have my hello world, and we're going to return hello world. And now we're going to send that out. We need to wrap it in a function called component here, but at least we start out defining our component just like we do in React. And there we see hello world. And the next step in React is that you want some external dependencies. So you want some props, right? So we should be able to just do that as normal. Let's do, I don't know, let's do count number, and let's put props in here. Let's put count here, props.count. And now it gives a type error, because what's necessary for Vue to deal with props is that you actually have to define in the runtime what props it's gonna observe. And I saw a comment in Vue that this is something they're looking at fixing, but the only thing you need to do is add this array, and it's typed, and it just makes sure that it works. But let's see, we're not passing in any count, so count 10, whatever. But this is like, so the first threshold for a React developer is, okay, they can still define their component as a function, but they can't just export it. They have to export it with this component. And that's fine, right? That's quite an easy sell with the promise of like performance and stuff we're going to look at soon. But that props thing, that's going to make React developers, that's maybe the biggest problem, I think. Which is funny, right? A thing like that can like completely put you off to the idea of using Vue instead. But anyways, it has to work that way. And then let's see, like this could be handled with like if you have plugin view JSX dash auto props, whatever, you could probably do something with it, and but it's up to the Vue team to have fixed that. Anyways, so what if you rather wanted this to be like an initial count, right? You want to bump the count internally, so you want to introduce some state. So what you would do in React is that you would start inserting the state here, right, with the UI. But in Vue, these UI components, they are completely pure, right? They're observing, but they are pure in their definition. So what you would do here instead is that you would say type state, let's call that count as well. And then you create another function for that. So let's call it, you can just call it state or something. And this also receives the props. And then we can say, what do we want to return? Did you want to, yeah, we wanted to increase it. So let's do increase as well. And that's what we're going to return from this. And yeah, I'm just looking at the auto suggestion. So we're creating a count and we're returning count value because we don't want to change it from the component. So these are things that we think a lot about in React. Like, so now this is actually, funny enough, the count is the same here. So I should probably have, why isn't this never used? There's something with the type checker here. I'm not like not in Vue, but in Code Sandbox. I'm not sure what's happened. Oh, is it because oh, maybe because I'm not using the function or something. Let's call it hello world state. I think that's the problem. Yeah, sorry. What was I saying? Yeah, so now we're going to pass state to this thing. And let's say state here. And we're going to say state. And we don't want to access the props there. So we still have 10 here, but now we can also say on click state.increase. And when we do that, it will increase, right? So the way you introduce state is by just creating another function. So you have two scopes. You have one scope. You have one scope for your state management, and you have one scope for your UI. They're still defined together in a file. But the point is that this function runs once, and this function runs again and again as any observed state or props updates. Now, the great thing about Vue as well is that you have on mounted, you have on unmounted. Like you actually have lifecycle hooks. For fuck's sake, why maybe this has been my biggest frustration. Like, why the fuck doesn't React have lifecycle hooks for UI? Like, either the UI is fucking mounted or it's not mounted. It's insane to me. And oh my god, I have so much stuff that I kind of kept down because I really want React to work. But anyways, and I can instantiate a class here, which I can then on unmounted, I can dispose of that class. Like I can do every single intuitive general programming. I can use my general programming intuition to do whatever I want in this scope. And then this scope is constrained to returning UI updates from the state. So this is much more true to state UI than React is, right? Yes. And then like on top of that, you have built-in primitives for doing transitions and and something called like Keep Alive. I think that's related to well, be gonna sync with. Oh, that's something else. This active component. Yeah, I'm not sure what Keep Alive is. What is Keep Alive? It's a built-in component that allows us to conditionally cache component when dynamically switching between. Oh, interesting. Anyways, so it has transition and transition group, which is really nice to have built in. What were we doing? Yes. So now the question is, how do you share state? So now we have component-based state. Yeah, and the final thing is, if you think about the Vue templates, you could call this setup, and you could call this template. Setup template. So it's basically the same as a Vue component file, but you're just defining the script tag as a function, and you define the template as a function returning JSX. And being a TypeScript developer, this makes a shit ton of sense to me. But you can call this whatever you want, right? Doesn't matter. Yes, and then the other thing is state management at a bigger scale. And this is the biggest problem with React, because when you want to go big on state management, you can't use React anymore. So you have to break out of React itself. You have to move to reactive primitives, because those are the only ones that's performant enough. And you can talk about like the React compiler, but that's not going to fix anything. Well, like in terms of scaling state management, it's going to fix some things. But the problem with the reason the React compiler won't fix state management is that even though it will automatically, so let's say you have a context where you have a shit ton of state that you want to share across your application, even though the React compiler can memorize the hell out of like states and callbacks and everything in there, it doesn't, like, the only way consuming components can update is if the context value itself changes. So that means that it doesn't matter what you change in the React context. It can be memoized like crazy, but if a change is going to propagate down to the consuming components, it needs to change the reference of the context value. And then the consuming components has no idea what changed. They just know that the context value changed, and everything that consumes that context will do a reconciliation. And it will reconcile to any nested child unless they have like memo. So it just becomes, yeah, I truly wish in retrospect, and maybe that didn't make any sense for the React team with their plans moving forward. But when they had the function component, when that was a pure component, that they went the path of reactive state instead of doing this in, to me, crazy hooks paradigm within the reconciler. It's just, it's not performant enough. It's completely mind-bending. And it's like the bad thing about React, where it was such a good thing. Yeah, sorry. Like I that's why I started talking about like React kind of made my career. So I don't want to be but it's like a breakup. It feels like a breakup story where like falling in love and having some good years together, and it kind of made me who I am. But it's time to consider breaking up. Anyways, So Vue has something called Pinya or something. Vue Pinya? Pinya? And this is their, like, they got initially inspired by Redux, but they moved away from that when they got their composition API. And like the reason Vue has their composition API is because of hooks, right? But they have a reactive composition API, as opposed to hooks, which is a reconciling composition API. But the thing is that if we look at the guide here, like this is freaking exactly what Impact is. The only thing is that they have this additional, for people who haven't embraced the composition API, they keep this. But this is like how they really want people to use it. So as you can see, this is like create reactive context. Here they just give it a name, but then it's exactly the same thing. There's absolutely no difference, right? And another thing is, what was I gonna do? The only thing here is that it's always global, from what I understand. They don't have nested, like you can compose stores by using them, like inject them in each other, but it's all global, which I find to be yeah. Kind of to the use store. Yeah. So I don't that's the thing. Like I like the signature. Like you have a concept called a store. You have a concept called store, define store. And then you can use where is it? Setup stores. And it's just a function where you define your reactive primitives and you return a public interface. I love that. What I don't like is that it has to be global, and you have to do this registration to the app and stuff. So it doesn't take props. You can't like mount them. And also the way you use other stores, I don't like that either, because it's not typed, right? So I played around some more with this, where I let's create a new thing. Let's call it global store. TS, and let's import store from the component. Component. Why does it say components? Oh, come on. And again, you can just do function global store. It can take props if you wanted to take props, and then you do exactly the same thing. Like count, ref, and the point is use exactly the same primitives as you do in a local component. There's no difference. And then we'll just get count, return counted value. And then we just export this. Yeah, sorry. And then we have, and I think this, like for a React developer, this makes a lot of sense. Maybe not for a Vue developer. But the structuring this array gives you two things. It gives you the global store, and the global store kind of the hook. I'm not sure if Vue, I think Vue has this use pattern. Composition. Don't they? Helpers. Hello, reactivity advanced. Oh, that's more. Oh, wait a minute. What's this? Global API. Docs. Where do they have conditional rendering, lifecycle hooks, watchers, blah blah blah. Scaling up. Yeah, I can't remember if they use that's a pattern or not. Anyways, so what we're gonna do, we're just gonna export those. And now, oh, sorry, I just changed something here in the signature. Oh, sorry. So this should be, and then this should be the, oh, didn't I? Oh, sorry, I didn't finish this signature. You have to excuse me. So this will be extends record string any. So this returns S, and that's the thing we're gonna inject. And it's the same here, only that we have props. S, and then we need to define the S. Record string any. This is the S. There we go. Oh, sorry. Naming things. Global store provider. Let's just call it that. So the point is that now you have the same API, but you can actually mount the store. So if we go in here and import, yeah, I guess we do this global store provider. We can do global store provider. And now we can use inside hello world. We can, I don't know, what should we do? Global store. Maybe we can do increase here as well. Increase count value, and we start at 50. And we're gonna go back here. And then we're just gonna say global store. Use global, global store. We just call, oh, come on. Yeah, I guess that's why it should be use. Anyways, let's change it to use. I think it's the convention, use global store. Let's see. Well, we could call it inject. Inject global store. Let's do that. Yeah. Let's do that. Because that's what we're doing. Sorry, it's the naming conventions and stuff. So then we just shove the global store here. Like that. And let's just simplify this. So this would also be a count of number, and it will also have increase void. And then here we should be able to see, well, you know what's gonna happen here. But the point is that there's no difference in how you create the state of a component and how you create the state that's shared across multiple components. Let's see. Global state.global store. And what's also such a relief with Vue is that they have deep reactivity. So you can just go in and push to lists and change nested properties and do whatever you want. That's the convention in Vue. That's perfectly fine to do that. Let's on-click here as well. State.global store increase. Let's see. There we go. It works. So to me, this is such a huge relief. Like, my point coming to this conclusion Like I haven't, you know, sometimes you just have these frictions over time and you have such a hard time to articulate it. And especially find like the tagline. I think that's a lot of stuff you're looking for when you have friction. You're looking for the tagline for the friction or the solution to the friction. And it's so hard to find it. But this, just finding this tagline, identified all the friction I've had with React. Why I don't like hooks. Why I don't like to use reactive primitives with React. Or it's not ideal to do so. And then all the things that we did with Impact, like here, you can still have promises here. Observable promises, no biggie. Can have query mutation, all of that stuff. Absolutely no worries. I wonder what Vue thinks about data fetching. Does it have like how did they do data fetching? Yeah, so they have Nuxt, which is more like component life. Yeah, I think, yeah, they're tied to, and this is server-side rendering. Anyways, I'm working with productivity apps. We don't really care about that. I thought maybe they had simple routing from scratch. Yeah, they have a Vue router. Oh, interesting. Because this is how you can do routing. That's interesting. Anyways, and this is also the thing. It's like, I saw this interview with Rich Harris talking about Svelte and React, and it's good that React, another thing that React did, which is kind of it's a good and a bad thing, but it's good that there is like a popular framework that does it, which is like React is very low level, so there's a shit ton of alternatives to routing. For example, with Vue, it's just one router. It comes from the Vue team, but and Svelte is not like that. Svelte is more like Vue. They have opinions and they provide the essentials. And I think I don't want the framework to do everything for me. There should still be options. But when it comes to something like routing, that's something that should just work, right? And transitions, and yeah, I don't know. That's hard to say, but it's hard to innovate if there's like the framework is the author of everything. So that's a good thing with React. It encourages innovation in the sense that you can use the word innovation, building 50 routing libraries for React. Okay, so where do I want to go with this? So I needed to do this rant. That's for sure. That is for sure. What I've seen is that I've seen people write about React developers moving to Vue, but I think it's Vue developers that has very limited React experience that tries to convince people to move to Vue, and they convince them with the full shift. I don't think you can convince a React developer to move to Vue with the current signature of like the point, you have to sell it, right? first of all, you can't convince them by moving to the template. You can convince them by moving with JSX, but you have to emphasize that, hey, you're still getting reconciliation for your UI, but we're going to provide you, instead of doing your state management inside the UI function, we're actually going to give you the promise of React, which is state, what's it called? Like the function state, transform state to UI. We're going to give you that, but you're going to have this other function where you actually do your state management. It being for a component, it being shared between components, it being completely global, doesn't matter. It's the exact same way to define it. And you use the same typing and everything. I guess the one thing that I'm curious about is passing callbacks. I haven't tested that through props, because I don't think Vue supports that in the template. I think. I'm not sure. We can test that. But anyways, so I'm not sure if I should write like an article on this, or I should build like a tool. Like sometimes I build tools just for the sake of the article. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do with this yet, but I just wanted to do a rant and talk about this, because this is definitely not obvious to React developers, that you can actually do this. You can keep the best of React and you can gain the best of Vue. It just sucks with that signature. Because you can't really fix it either. Like with the define component, if you choose to move your function, like if you want to keep define component, blah, define component, and you want to like, maybe you could, for example, on define component, you would do your state management here, but you would my component, but you would just reference my component, right? The problem with this is that you would have to bind it. So you would have to do something like this, null, and then props, and then state, for example, or a state props, where you would get the props here. And then you would like return const state is reactive, whatever. So this is the problem. It's like this signature just creates this very awkward thing, arguably. So it would be nice to like introduce Vue to React developers by just doing what React developers do, which is defining a function for a component. And then it's much easier to sell that. Oh, by the way, you can't just export it. You have to put it into an actual component function. Does maybe, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna think about this. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, but I should probably write an article at least. Yeah, because the thing is, like, if I ever were to like introduce, if I were ever gonna adopt Vue, I would like to bring some ideas in there, especially observable promises, like the query mutation primitives. But those could be something else. But also the store that's nested, like you actually mount the store, so you can take in props. That's also a thing. But what is that? Is that is there something called Vuereact? Vuereact. No. Or Vue. Vuereact. Vuereact. Has anyone done anything like that? Yes, React, of course. But it's just like it's helper functions. It's like React. It's Vue helper functions for React developers. Yeah, I'm not sure what you would call that, but it would definitely look something like this. It's very simple stuff. Very simple stuff, and the type handling is really important. Like here is all the query stuff. Yeah, I think it would be worth. And also the fact that you kind of have to go in and do this. Like there's a whole concept around this of it's like a view pattern, right? It's like the React view pattern. Yeah, anyways, need to reflect on that. But I hope this stuff made sense. I'm honestly not sure what I'm gonna do with impact, because I'm never gonna be happy with. Like I'm trying to. It feels like I'm trying to make the best out of the situation. But if I truly want to, maybe with all this experience with React, like the most value I can give to React developers is to make them consider moving to Vue. I'm definitely gonna put this. So what we're definitely gonna do is put these this into a package, and then you know what we could do? We could what did I use for that Yeah, because I'm using Tailwind CSS for a family Scrum map. So it would be interesting to try to refactor that to Vue. That would be very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, anyways, I'm just sitting here looking at the screen. That was my stream today. Bye for now.